student contact time. This agreement as to how the teacher shall be compensated will be made ahead of the scheduled event between the principal or superintendent and the teacher. So that's all existing language. It was just the dollar amounts that changed. And after doing our research and being presented with information from other districts, we were quite low in those areas. Because we've had some significant issues over the past 4, 5, 6 years with obtaining substitute teachers, we've utilized some of our regular staff to sub during their prep time, and we are paying that at $16 per hour. The request was obviously to $30 per hour, which was in much better alignment with what we were seeing from other districts of comparable size. Delete in subdivision 2 under Article 12, Section 6. Delete Article 12, Section 6.
Article 12. Oh, this is 12.
Subdivision 2, A, C, and E.
Okay.
And that had to do with prep time substituting, payment for covering classes when no sub is available. So what we did is we deleted a lot of language, and what was kept is if several teachers cover another teacher's class for the entire day. So from time to time, especially at the elementary, we might take a class of 24 kids and distribute them to their teammates. So if there's 5 other teachers, there's 5 other students per class, just redistributed. So the teachers would then split $30 per hour for the hours of when combining classes occurred. So that took the place of a lot of language that did exist at one point, some confusing pieces there. So that's that piece. For insurance, that was a priority of the district, is to address the really low insurance amounts that we had in our teacher's contract. That was one of the things that we were seeing, and one of the reasons why we were losing staff that we were trying to hire this past summer. So in year 1, for single coverage, we increased the premium payment district contribution by $440. In year 2, that was an additional $100. Family insurance was the biggest glaring issue, and Amy can certainly speak to this too if there are questions. We were the same amount for single insurance as we were for family, so we made a concerted effort to add dollars there to that level. So almost $2,400 there, $2,390, and an additional $150 for year 2.
Explain that one to me, Matt, in terms of what a year 1, year 2 looks like of a person who already has insurance.
Okay, so
through the district.
Previously, each teacher received $3,960 towards premium of a single or family plan.
Got it.
Plus $1,000 of VIBA, which is the health insurance savings account.
Yep. So that's so say like that's 2019. So then 2020. What is the difference of year 1 versus year 2 in terms of those payment differences?
So year 1 will add $440 to that $3,960
for this current year.
For this
so
current
year. Okay.
And then next year we'll add an additional $100.
So it's additive.
So year 1 is really about a catch up.
So single increase is 440. Then it's 100 on top of the 440, or reduced down to 440. Okay.
$100.
So year 2 then really is
still building that base up.
Okay, understood.
Yep.
Okay, that was.
It's an additional $100 on top of the 440.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep. And we saw a glaring issue. Most districts differentiate between single and family coverage, and there's a different premium contribution. Ours was the same at $3,960. So that's why we made the concerted effort to address that. We felt that if a teacher was making a commitment, most of the time families we saw as part of our school district too, so we thought that was a wise move. ECFE and preschool is another, really insurance and ECFE and preschool are two main district priorities. Mutually with the teachers, but it was really pushed by the district. This is another area where many of our neighboring districts have gone to putting preschool and ECFE teachers on the teacher's salary schedule. We have not. It's sort of a pay-to-play type thing. Anyway, it's not a general fund expense. It comes out of the community ed fund. The ECFE and preschool teachers are an addendum to the master agreement. They have their own section in terms of their salary. So what this says is we are going to make an effort over the next 4 years, next 2 contract cycles, to get our ECFE and preschool teachers onto the schedule. So in addition to the increases outlined for all of our teachers, ECFE and preschool teachers will get an additional 7% per year as we work for a 4-year cycle to get them onto the schedule. And again, it's not a general fund expense, so it is not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily hurt our bottom line. And next month you'll hear our audit report. I can just tell you right now that community ed fund increased by 65,000 ballpark. 58,000, and there's a fund balance in that account of 340,000. District match, that has to do with the 403B. So what that is teachers beginning in year 3 will become eligible. So that's a much sooner eligibility period for that $500 yearly match. And then starting with the 6th year, which is what the previous language said, that was the first time that our staff was eligible. They're eligible for that $2,000 match. And then we increased the cap, the lifetime match cap from $20,000 to $20,500. So an additional $500 of match could be had from the district as long as the employee continues to contribute up to that $500. So what we'll have to do there is we'll have an open enrollment period that obviously has come and gone, but we'll reopen it, and our plan is to reopen it through December 15th, pending ratification tonight. Schedule C is how we pay our coaches and advisors. So we agreed to add $5,382 to cover postseason compensation and or salary increases in longevity. It doesn't necessarily mean that we'll be paying out that much, but we added that much to commitment because we added some language in there that commits us to that. Additional piece of that is we agreed to forming more of a standing Schedule C committee to learn the compensation schedule that's outlined in Schedule C and continue to review that and address any concerns that pop up from our employees as it relates to Schedule C. Buyback share sick days, that was a piece that our teachers wanted, is to have to be able to share a sick leave bank and or to get paid out for sick leave. We address as a district that we have ongoing concerns with substitutes and lack thereof. So we agreed that we would study the issues that we both have, and we would have a recommendation for our next contract cycle. And the one outstanding issue that we absolutely need to complete, and we're trying to get our next meeting scheduled, is unrequested leave of absence language. It's sort of been hanging out there in the balance. We've continued to retain the old language. We're about 3/4 of the way through the ULA language piece, but we need to finish that up. And that will become an MOU once it's completed as part of the contract. Any questions? I suppose you have to make a motion and we can discuss.
I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Tom, is there a second?
I'll second.
Ryan? Okay, now discussion. Did the teachers vote? I know they voted.
Yes, they did.
Did we have the results?
I have them. It was ratified.
Okay.
I believe it was 95 yes and 17 no.
Connie?
Does MSBA have ULA language that we? that
Yes.
we-
We've been using it.
Okay.
Of course, there's disagreement. That's the issue. We've been using it since the onset of discussion with ULA, and MSBA language is it's strong.
Mhm.
And of course, admin
Admin has theirs too.
their
Has their
own
own
strong
too.
language,
Yeah.
so
So
Okay.
it's trying to compromise.
Okay.
And we've seen some other districts' language too, you know, trying to see how they've compromised too, so,
Mhm.
yeah, for sure.
Just out of curiosity, more for my education, for the 403B match, why do we put lifetime caps on there? Is that precedent throughout other districts? Is that, what's the rationale for that?
It does exist in other districts. They're varying amounts, of course. I suppose, I would just guess, the rationale would be to limit how much you're going to pay out as a district, limit an ongoing expense.
Okay.
That's something I anticipate going to be continued to be a teacher priority item going forward in new contract years.
Any questions or comments? Okay, we have a motion on the floor and a second. Are we ready to vote? Okay, all those in favor of approving the 1920, 21, 1919, 1920, 1920, 1921 contract, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Before we move on to the building administrative assistant contract, I was neglectful. I should have welcomed our Boy Scouts. Thank you for being here. I hear that you are working on on communication badge? Okay, good. What troop are you with? Great, good. Well, it's good that you're here and continue to come and ask questions and ask your leaders questions too. Okay, thank you. Okay, 7.2, review and act on the 1921 building administrative assistant contract.
Similarly, or in similar fashion, I'll use the tutorial to explain the contract revisions. So this was negotiations that lasted 2 sessions. Our building administrative assistants are not a collective bargaining unit. They're an at-will employee group. However, it's been our practice that we continue to negotiate in good faith, just as we would a unionized group. And what we have here is a salary increase. We created a salary schedule several contract negotiations ago, and it's very similar in principle to our teacher salary schedule and to our paraprofessional salary schedule, where they include steps. It does not include lanes, but well, I shouldn't say that. To a certain degree, it includes lanes. We have a 10-month grade and a 12-month grade, administrative assistant grade. And then as they move down, that would be included as step. Now, I'm being careful not to say as they increase in number of years, because we reserve the managerial right to hire somebody at a step of our choosing. But this improved the salary schedule by 1.25% each year, plus their step. Health insurance will increase by $250 per year for both 12-month and 10-month employees. We're not differentiating between the two. Previously, there were no vacation days for our 10-month administrative assistants. They will receive 5 days vacation without proration. And severance pay, there was some change in the wording to reflect an increase of $500 in the payment. So changing from $2.50 per hour to $3 per hour after that 20-year period. No other significant changes were made to the contract, and likewise, we also consistently review what other school districts pay, and we want to obviously be competitive with those other school districts. And the administrative assistants agreed to this proposal, and we subsequently agreed as well.
I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Connie? Discussion? Or no, second? A second?
I'll second.
Tom? Okay, discussion or questions? Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, review and act on the resolution canvassing the return of votes.
Hope is the expert in this, so I will certainly lean to her, but following an election, as we held a special election last Tuesday, November 5th, and we have the results of that election, and as a result, we have to, you as a board have to act on a resolution to canvass the returns of votes of that said election. So this is a resolution that I've pulled up for you on the screen.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Second, Rob. Okay, discussion and questions? None? Okay, roll call, please.
Deb Holly,
Yes.
Tom Vogel,
Yes.
Lauren Pedersen,
Yes.
Connie Hennin,
Yes.
Rob Langheim,
Yes.
Ryan Daner.
Yes.
Motion carries. Next, we have 7.4, the resolution authorizing the issuance of certificate of elections.
Madam Chair, before we
Yep.
move forward,
Yep.
may I just congratulate Ryan on being elected to the board officially by the voters. So congratulations, Ryan. Look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Ditto.
Oh.
Okay, so we have 7.4, the resolution authorizing the issuance of certificate of election. And this is the certificate that states that Ryan has received the largest number of votes cast for the office of school board, and there is one 3-year term vacancy in the board caused by the expiration of the term, the first Monday in January following the election. So, okay, so I need a motion.
Motion to approve.
Tom, is there a second?
Second.
Lauren, okay, this is also a roll call vote. It's a resolution.
Deb Holly,
Yes?
Tom Vogel,
Yes.
Lauren Pedersen,
Yes.
Connie Hennin,
Yes.
Rob Langheim,
Yes.
Ryan Daner.
Yes.
Okay, then we have, the second part of this is the acceptance of office and the oath of the office. So Hope, do you do this?
We'll do this later, I just attached it saying this is what he will be doing.
On January.
In
January
January,
1.
when he officially takes office. Okay, good, thank you.
You're gonna need to memorize that, right?
Yeah,
I know.
I have it memorized.
Study up.
Okay, thank you. 7.5, review and act on the final 2019-2021 strategic plan.
So our strategic plan was shared with our Curriculum and Technology Advisory Committee, and we had some discussion over different pieces of the plan, but no substantial changes were made to it. Connie and Deb, I believe you were both there at the Curriculum and Tech Advisory Council meeting. Anything to add as to the feedback that was received?
They spent, they had questions about how teachers were going to be observed and our new process and procedure that we spent time on. We spent time talking about the ACT testing, if we were planning on continuing since it's not actually a mandate, and that we were going to pay for it. we spent time talking about that. A lot of it was parent concerned about if we have our students ready for applying to colleges, and that was brought up in different places in the strategic plan, and I think that we were able to assure everyone to the best of our ability that we are. Maybe that's not in their point of view, that we've done enough, but they're doing new things, doing the FAFSA, meeting with the parents, making sure the kids are aware that colleges are visiting, doing things during SNAP, and I think they're doing the best that they can do with.
There's a significant, I feel that there's been a significant movement this year, and I know that Jeff Visner has been driving that. I've been in close communication with Mr. Visner about the expectations and the changes that we'd like to see as both part of the strategic plan, but just overall as good practice. So I know that there's already been some significant changes made, but there's also some things in the works going forward, and a more concerted effort to get information out in a variety of ways.
Okay, thanks, Connie.
Yep.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the final 2019-2021 strategic plan.
So moved.
Ryan, discussion, or second? Rob.
I'll
Second.
go by Ryan. It's cool.
Second by Connie. Okay, questions or discussion?
So we will still be working on this at our workshop, or is this is a done deal now?
Done deal.
Okay.
Okay.
We have to move forward because we're like halfway through
Yeah.
this year.
Great, well,
Yeah, we gotta start executing on it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Review and act on wrestling field trip to Rochester.
Motion to approve?
We have
Second.
Lauren, motion and a second to approve the wrestling field trip. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. 7.7, review and act on the wrestling field trip to Fargo.
motion to approve.
Connie?
Second.
Lauren? Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Review and act on a wrestling field trip to River Valley, Wisconsin. Entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Connie?
Second.
Lauren? Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 7.9, review and act on the field trip request for the dance team.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion by Lauren. Is there a second?
Second.
Connie, second. Questions or discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Carried. Okay, on to 8.1, superintendent report.
All right, so this is a little bit different flavor than I typically do. I mean, there's some typical business here, but then I also want it to be part of a discussion, or maybe just chew on this, and we can have a discussion a little bit further at our November work session. But I wanted to get the information out there as soon as possible after our election. In terms of our enrollment count, there's an attached document that will show that we are up 3 students from our October 1st count. Of course, it's about 30 students less than what our what-if budget count predicted. Still more students, several more students than we had last year, but not to the extent that we had expected. Teachers on call. I've attached the October 2019 report for our district. The fill rate for teachers during that month was nearly 95%, while for paraprofessionals it was around 45%. Both rates were higher than September, the previous month, with the teacher fill rate higher than the October 2018 rate, and the paraprofessional fill rate lower than the October 2018 rate. As would be expected, the highest rates come when there is a short period of time in terms of notice. So the more notice that is given, the more chance there is to fill with the teachers on call sub. Results of election. So getting into some of the what's next pieces. So I'm going to read some of this pretty much verbatim. Obviously, the results of our election last Tuesday were not what we had hoped for, but obviously, as a professional board and team, we must move forward. I've listed some options regarding what the district could do, or when the district could move forward as regard to future votes, the soonest at which that could happen. That is something that you as a board will need to discuss as part of the what's next conversation. Amy and I are receiving our final audit results, and as a result, we'll be reviewing the fiscal 21 budget timeline, and obviously we'll be doing a revised fiscal 20 budget as well. So that's some work that we've already started to have discussions about. As regard to question 1, at this time we anticipate reductions of somewhere between $200,000 and $400,000. Question 1, as we know, is all about operating funds. But as we do our revised budget and we get the audit report finalized, we'll know a little bit more about what number we need to hit in terms of a target. But that's why we'll revert back to that budget development calendar, and which includes processes and procedures needed to make recommendations for reductions. So there are options that need to be discussed as part of our fiscal 21 budgeting process, such as long-term facility maintenance spending to address the maintenance necessities at our elementary school, the potential use of what's called abatement bonds to address parking and drives, drop-off and pickup loops, and how we'll solve ECFE and preschool kids company space needs, which also obviously have ramifications in terms of our K-4 population. All of those have pros and cons, and it's something that we'll have to weigh as we move forward. As you all know, as a board, we ordered soil borings. You didn't vote on it, but you gave me the thumbs up that it was a good idea about a month and a half ago, to move forward with soil borings. They will not go out of date, but there is a cost associated with those borings. We had to get on the calendar with that company, American Engineering and Testing, and I believe next week they'll be doing the soil samples. So what they do is they go down, drill holes, and determine what type of soil you have in different pieces of the property, the new property, to determine the building, the type of building conditions that we'll encounter there, and whether or not soil corrections would be needed. So we're anticipating that cost to be about $20,000. So we have to have a discussion on whether or not the district should proceed with some work as it relates to civil engineering. So we're doing soil borings, of course, at the cost of about $20,000, but there's also some site surveying fees and work that needs to be done, and we're anticipating that cost to be around $20,000 as well. So we have to decide in the near future whether or not to proceed with that work, or if we should just wait until later on. I would suggest that maybe at this point in time we wait. In terms of the house and the property, Our last lessees have vacated, and we have to do some maintenance on the house. We have to do some repainting, clean the carpets, do some upgrades to shower surrounds and things like that. And then we will be re-renting the house unless you tell me that that's not a good idea. It provides us, about $15,000 to $18,000 a year in revenue, which helps us make those lease payments for that land. Similarly, we have to decide whether or not we want to rent the farmland out. I suggest that if we do, we should put an additional clause that states that we will be conducting soil borings and different surveys on the property, and that the farmer must understand that that's our right to do that. So they'll have to schedule their plowing and things like that around the work that's going to be done on the property. For example, I know that they want to turn that soil over right now, but we have soil borings coming, and I would suggest that they wait until after. We can't control whether or not the ground is frozen, before they get to that work. But I just think, regardless, we let if the same farmer wants to rent it again, we let them know that it's available, but it's available after the soil borings are complete.
Remind me again why we're proceeding with that. Is it just that we've already kind of
We
signed on the
committed.
dotted line and that we can't get out of it?
We
Or
can't, we'd lose the money.
so we've already kind of signed the check?
Yeah.
And the value for that, that's not necessarily going to be something that we're going to have to do again if we waited, say, like 5 years from now?
Correct. The soil is what it is, so that'll be good for the lifetime of the property. At some point in time, the district will build on that piece of property, so those results will never they'll never spoil.
Theoretically, if you were to sell that land to like a developer, I mean, there's some value to that work that's already been done as
Right.
well. It's not like it's
True.
worthless.
What is the, and if we don't know it off the top of the head, that's fine, but in terms of our lease payment, in terms of what we can get for renting out the house, and in terms of what we can get for or for basically renting it to a farmer, what does that math look like?
So the net,
Yeah, more specifically, is there a net, and if so, what is it?
what's our payment per year, Amy? 90?
$58,000.
58 for, no, that's after we, no, it's the COP.
So I think we bring in approximately about $25,000 in rent, between $20,000 and $25,000 in rent, and our debt payment for our COP landed at about $58,000.
So 60, 50, so we're 45% of the way there. What could we get if we gave it to a farmer? Like what's that amount?
What do you mean?
Or is that's part of the
That's part of it.
oh, okay. And all acres that can be farmed are being farmed?
Yes.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Has there been any conversation that we could put that $20,000 in some kind of an account that we would do it not this year, so we would have the money available to us?
No. They won't do that.
Okay.
They're so busy that in order to get on their calendar to do the work, we had to commit, and I signed the contract. So options on when another vote could be held. So we're limited on operating levy to November if we're going to do a traditional ballot, regular ballot. So the next time would be next November 3rd, 2020, which is the general election. You can do a mail ballot, and the soonest that could be done would be April 14th, or you could do it May 12th, or you can't do it August 11th. because there would be a primary and people could not vote in 2 places. I would recommend strongly against not doing a mail ballot. I don't think that's wise. School building bonds have a little more freedom. You can go out sooner, and there is no November limitation there. So you can't go out any sooner than 6 months after the first failed request, 180 days. So that puts us at May 3rd. We could do Tuesday, May 12th. However, that's not possible. So just forget that that's even possible. Because we'd have to have review and comment. We'd have to resubmit to the Department of Ed. We're not going to make timeline. Because you'd have to have that all done by the end of November. It's not possible. If you fail twice, you have to wait a year. So you have a year waiting period. If there were different questions, projects amount changed, there's no blackout period like was outlined above. You don't have to wait for 6 months. That 6 month waiting period is literally if you ask the same questions. If you change it up or change dollar amounts, then you can go out sooner. You can see, and that's where the timeline issue comes in. February 11th, I misspoke. April 14th, May 12th. There's no way we could meet the February 11th, nor would I think that would be a good idea. August 11th and November 3rd. So when I asked our consultant, they did say that, I asked, okay, how much in terms of a change? Is it, what's the amount? And it's not specifically stated in statute, and they've never had a problem with any of their other customers with a 10% change. And it's not really questioned. The next item I wrote was option regarding community input. So I did attend the Minnesota Association of School Administrators Conference in early October. I attended a session put on by Kraus Anderson, which is a construction management firm. They use a survey company, a third-party engagement firm called School Perceptions. And I thought their presentation was excellent. I thought it was a really nice combination between a company that comes in and does work to determine voter tolerance. They do priority level surveying, what are people's priorities, or what do they feel in terms of tolerance of operating costs, and also tolerance in terms of bond authority. And that company will help us determine those amounts, and then from there we can do some value engineering of our previously asked questions and determine whether or not, what we want to move forward with based on what voters would have tolerance for. Or they come back and say that you have no tolerance. Of course, there's financial costs to a survey, which I've asked them to provide me a proposal. So I'll have that by our November work session. And the construction management firm, they're willing to obviously work with us in terms of our referendum campaign, and they're willing to defer some costs associated with that, pending a successful referendum. Tony Scholander is the gentleman that I called. Tony is the person that we worked with. He was previously with DLR Group when we passed the middle school referendum and the community center referendum. Rob, I think you know Tony quite well. So Tony now works for Kraus Anderson. I think he does a really good job. The success rate that they reported, I believe they said 47 out of the 48 districts that they had worked with, this survey company had passed. The only district that didn't is the district that didn't listen to what the voter tolerances were. And they just said, no, we think we can do more. And then they went beyond.
Back, what was it, 10 years ago when we did our last referendum, was it 2009? One Sandy and I worked on
For the
that one.
operating?
So we did a survey for that referendum as well, but I thought it was done through Springstead.
Springstead. It
So
was.
how are they different, how is Springstead, are this like, do these basically do the same thing as Springstead did as well?
Yeah, there's tons of survey companies out there.
Okay.
Yeah. Springstead is similar to like, so we use Baird Financial.
Mhm.
Springstead is Baird. They're
Okay.
just a different company.
Okay.
Yeah. There's Northland, there's Ellers, Baird, I mean, there's 4 or 5 different ones that really represent Minnesota schools. And most of them have some type of referendum support. Then there's companies that are sort of on their own, and this company actually, I believe Kraus Anderson sought them out because they like their product. And like I said, I think it's a nice package that goes together with a construction management firm.
Mhm.
So the CM then can help take a look at what that voter tolerance is. Take a look at what we as a committee said was our priorities and sort of dovetail that or do an overlay with what the community feels priorities are and, you know, redevelop the package that you're asking voters, is my 10-second elevator speech on what they do.
Okay.
And I would have no doubt that if this is something we're interested in after we have more discussion on it at our work session in November, that we could get representatives from these groups out to have a conversation with you.
Okay.
And I think there's time, based off of the conversation that Amy and Tim and I had with them. We actually had it today. We scheduled a conference call last week and had it today. I wanted to get it done before this meeting. One of the things that they talked about was acknowledge the results with the voters, you know, sooner than later. Explain, you know, we appreciate that they shared with us through the vote what they felt, and acknowledge that we still have some needs that we will need to be addressing, and that over the next several months we'll be studying, you know, the results of the referendum, determining our next steps, making some adjustments to our budget to balance it. And then what they're suggesting is a sooner than later survey with our staff, with our internal folks, to determine the level of support and thought on the referendum, and not just the referendum, but how they feel about their job, and how they feel about working for our district, because that has some implications on the vote. And then do a community survey with all of the constituents, probably in April to May time period. And then we would take a look at those results and have our summer to do that backfilling or that redesign work, and then potentially go out again in November. And I think, just again, at first listen, Amy, you want to add anything to that?
I thought it was really interesting. I think
So did you say they would survey the whole constituency?
Yes.
Via phone, via mail survey, via internet link survey, or?
I think it's all of the above. I think their goal is to, you know, 15 to 17%, I think is probably is a good survey. I mean, they explained today that they had one district recently that was nearly 30% return, which is phenomenal. And if you get that, you really get a strong sense of what people will accept.
So the timeline would be survey April. We would have enough time in the summer to put together a package to go to the voters, to give them enough information from like September, July, September, July, August, September,
Yep.
to go to vote in November?
Yes.
Even considering we may have to redo all of our questions and everything?
Mhm. Yeah, because really you have to pass a resolution by August. That's when you're passing resolutions for a November vote. So you're doing your planning work from end of May, let's say early June, through early August. Then you get all your resolution packaged, your review and comment work submitted, that type of thing in that late summer timeframe, late August, mid to late August, and then you have 45 days, and you do your you're sharing in your campaign 45 days prior to the vote.
How-
I've just been watching the Worthington superintendent, you know, that failed, what, six times? And he just kept saying, engage, 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 and I think, I just want to make sure we have enough time to do that.
I think anything longer than 45 days is fruitless.
Okay.
People don't have that attention span.
Right.
I think the other piece that we heard today was the tax credit component.
That'll make a difference.
That, you know, if you make over $113,000 household income, you're potentially eligible for a one-time tax credit. If you make less than, I can't remember what the threshold is, 99, I think it's right around $99,000, you're eligible for an annual tax credit threshold, which they used and they messaged and they engaged with their with the public in a strategy over and over, and it was very successful. White Bear Lake is an area that they use that strategy. They passed a state
Biggest
record,
one in
300
history.
and some million dollars.
What is the school of thought on general election years, doing this in a general election year?
Depends on who you talk to. Some say steer clear, some say, you know, they've had great success with a general election year.
Well, I mean, the logical result is gonna be a higher turnout, right?
Yes.
So then I guess that has to go into
Yep.
the calculus of what.
We
what it
had
is.
an extremely low turnout, extreme low.
Do we know of the 1,900 people that voted, where they came from, or who were employees, who were not employees, city of Jordan, township? Do we have that kind of demographic? Is that part of the exit polling or that information, or what do we have and what don't we have?
Right now, we don't have that, but I did ask the county for it. Since it was a standalone election, they have to manually input all the voter history.
Right.
So once they do that, I think I'll be able to get that breakdown by precinct.
Okay, that'd be,
Because
I think,
that's
very
the
helpful.
key that would be very helpful for us, yeah.
This is unscientific, but I can tell you that our townships voted in full force. Our parents did not. And it's really that simple.
Well, and I think, at least in my mind, as we think about these next steps, I'd really want to be able to better understand
Mhm.
why.
Right.
Because understanding that dynamic is going to be key for what we do going forward.
Well, especially because, I mean, it's clear we don't have a Worthington situation, right? It's not that long ago that we successfully passed a referendum. So there's something to be learned about the questions, the process, whatever that may be, to take into the next go-around.
And I really think the modern day referendum goes through this process. And I had never done a pre-referendum survey, so I didn't have that feeling that that was absolutely 100% necessary. I almost think that it is, especially with the way people engage.
Right.
Okay, people don't engage in a face-to-face manner as
Right.
much anymore.
They didn't come.
They didn't even come to the levels that they came when we had this election.
Right.
And I wouldn't say we had stellar turnout at our referendum conversations when we passed this facility. But it was much, much less. And in terms of the small group engagement, we just had less luck in getting an opportunity to be in front of people. There were several groups that had a vote, whether or not they were gonna allow us to come. It was just a different,
Right.
different process this time. And I do think there's something to allowing for that constituency feedback, but it's done differently in 2020 than it was in 2014, and certainly in 2000, and certainly much differently than it was in the 90s.
Right. Well, and I think where I'm most interested in that is that a large part of this investment is for issues that we have to address within our elementary school and our early ed. And I think that if you look at kind of that family cohort and dynamic and how we communicate and understand what they feel are needs as we be kind of responsive, I think we need to be mindful of that, because I think you're right. I think that it's a different ballgame.
It is, and I think the other thing that's going against us in Scott County is specifically is taxes in the county are high.
Yep.
If you look at those charts that we put together, school taxes aren't high when you compare us to other schools. But the county, and I'll say this, I'm gonna say it on air, because it's frustrating to me. Scott County is building a new government center, or at least a significant part of a government center. I'm pretty sure none of us at the table that live in Scott County got a chance to vote. They just do it. Why, as school districts, with the most vulnerable group of people, our littlest, do we have to ask for every penny that we get? It's very frustrating, and I think it's important that gets out. And I think we have to go to our legislators and share that message that this is just not a fair funding system. The rich get richer, while the property poor stay the same. And I do think that also played a significant role. Tax impacts were going to be significant. While it was needed, I think we made a strong case that question one, how can you argue we're $500 less per pupil than the state average? How can you argue that that's not a need? I suppose it's possible, but I just don't see it. Of course, I'm a school person too. Question two, we outlined needs. These were specific needs. Our kitchen, our gym space at the elementary, our parking and drives. These are all significant needs that we have. A security concern at our high school with where the office is located. Our early learning center, the gateway into the district.
Right.
So it's just tough to wrap your mind around, which is, again, we're emotional because we're wrapped into it. We invested a lot of time into it. That's why I do think it's important, getting back to the topic at hand. A third party is sometimes a good thing to have happen, to come in and say, you need to take a step back and think about it differently, or you need to think about how you did it this way or didn't do it this way, or whatever it might be.
Right. Well, and I think that's exactly right, because we identified those as what we think are needs, but, to be exceptionally candid, our employees that live and breathe in the elementary school every single day, they didn't feel a need to come out and vote. Our families that have elementary school kids that go to that facility every single day, that see the parking, that see the lines, they didn't come out and vote. And we need to better understand why.
Yeah,
And we need to be able to take that information, and then we need to be able to
Yep.
adjust what we, kind of need to do going forward, and what type of investment, and what's the capacity, and be, kind of mindful of everything else that they have kind of going on, because there's a lot of, kind of priorities that are out there, and we need to make sure that we kind of get that right fit. So, I think that, and I do believe this, I think that, we want to be kind of understandful and mindful of, kind of, we got clear data from our community on this vote. I don't think it's a no, I think it's a not now. I think it's an opportunity for us to, sharpen our pencil a little bit and be able to, kind of take that information and see, kind of where we go.
And I think it's critical to find out why. And one of the things I was gonna ask is, I'm assuming that this work is primarily forward-looking, or focusing on the next referendum.
Yeah.
But a postmortem of some type would be helpful. It wasn't a bad night for referendums, right? And I think I saw that, I think MSBA said that 38 out of 42 operating levies passed. So you can kind of cross out the, any kind of macroeconomic reasons. Then it gets to, like you said, is it the tax environment in Scott County? Is it apathy that personally I felt? Does that come from passing a bond referendum and people thinking that it passed last time? I don't need to make it out. What are the variables? I don't know that we're ever going to get perfect picture of that, but I think that's important, because
I think Connie's right in terms of engagement. I think I just think engagement looks different today than it even did 5 years ago. And that's where I think there are experts that do
Yeah.
this work, and I think it's important that we consider their assistance.
On some level, the survey is almost like asking for
100%.
permission, right? I mean, as a voter, you may look at that as, I gave my input.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did talk today, they actually went through that as an option, if that's something that you wanna chew on a little bit and think about, and we can figure out how we tailor the discussion on the November work session. If that's something that we determine that we wanna do is more of that post-mortem, exit survey, that's something that they're willing to do. That adds another layer, of course, and probably adds some additional cost.
There may be a way that you tailor
Yeah.
the future-looking questions in a way that addresses
Yeah,
that.
my gut tells me, again, I've been wrong before, but quite a bit, actually. But maybe to let it rest a little bit. I think it's clear, I think we need to acknowledge that, the voters spoke, this is the results. We continue to have needs. We'll be moving forward. With asking you for your input in terms of what you feel are priorities in terms of, operating, levy tolerance and improvements, structural infrastructure improvements to our district. I think if we're very upfront that way and say, we're gonna take the next several months to, look at voter information, look at, the data surrounding, voter tolerance, look at what it does, what the impact to our budget is, explain, as a result of an anticipated X amount of dollars shortfall, we had to cut X amount of dollars, and these are the decisions that we had to make. I think we can spell that out and then get that feedback from the constituents, then we may consider going forward as early as next fall. But like I said, I'm gonna get those proposals, that'll be part of our work session. I'm guessing I could get at least one of the two of them to come to that work session, if that's something that we wanted to do, to talk a little bit about that. Give you an opportunity as board members to ask questions and understand that process a little bit better than what I can explain and just listening and jotting down a few notes today. Amy, I don't know if I'm missing out on anything that you heard differently than I did.
No, I mean, I thought our conversation today was really good. What I really liked about that is when they did like their website, they put that property tax calculator on there along with the refund, potential refund that the property tax owners could get also, which could be big.
And we did that, we just did it too late.
We did put the refund.
Yeah. We did it with about 3 weeks to go, and I think the message I heard from them was that was a part of their messaging, that was a part of their education process, that, yeah, this is what the impact could be, but, you're eligible for this, and there's a really good chance you can get it. And they helped, I think, voters understand that a little bit better, so I think that's wise. The final piece, and this is something that, I don't expect us to get into in-depth conversation, but I do think it needs to be part of our work session discussion at the end of the month here, is reduction options. Again, anticipating somewhere between $200,000 and $400,000. I know our principals, directors would like to know sooner than later. Things to start looking at and moving forward with. One of the things, teachers on special assignment positions, we have 2 of them. Not necessarily any rhyme or reason to this, but class sizes or TOSA positions, I think, should be part of that discussion point. Like I mentioned earlier, how do we address the maintenance of our elementary building? What do we spend money on? I mean, for example, you can spend $100,000 on windows really quickly. That won't even touch the tip of the iceberg. Do you do that because it's sort of like if you give a mouse a cookie, you're gonna uncover another layer of issues. So the more money you put in an old envelope like that without making wholesale changes, it becomes just a difficult question to ask, and whether or not that's something you want to invest in. Secondary electives, obviously you as a board have made a concerted effort at addressing that, and we've done a good job, I feel, of adding electives at both the middle school and high school level. We've added our Summit Academy programming. It's expensive. Our Summit Academy is expensive, but as we talked about today with our consultants that we had on the phone, you look at Shakopee, they have an academy program too. Do you want to be competitive? It's just a real tough balance between what you reduce in terms of your expenditures and doing too much that you actually harm your bottom line even more than what you intended. Enrichment and honors at the elementary and middle school. And what does that look like going forward? There's some expense associated with that in terms of staffing. Extracurricular options and fees, which we've had some discussion about at recent board meetings. Paraprofessional staffing levels. Schoology versus Google Classroom. This is a no-brainer, and I think it's something is automatic. We're going to be doing that. The reason why we would hesitate is when we went one-to-one, we did a year-long process of looking at other schools. The reason why we chose Schoology is it looked like Facebook. And at the time, that interface was better than what Google Classroom had. Google Classroom has made some significant strides in terms of developing that learning management system, and it's free. Okay? So we'd be saving $15,000 right off the bat, right there. The other issue is staff morale, because they've built their work, their lessons, their interface for Schoology, and then we'd be asking them to move to Google Classroom. So even though there'd be a $15,000 to $20,000 savings there, I would submit to you that we would have to spend some money to give teachers some time to rewrite for Google Classroom, if that makes sense. NWA versus FastBridge. This is something we're studying anyway as well. NWA is that benchmark testing. It's lengthy. We do it multiple times per year. It takes a lot of time. FastBridge is much quicker. It's just little snippets. It's still a benchmarking assessment. There is a little bit of a cost savings there as well.
Is that cost savings worth the, what's the word I'm looking for? I mean, is NWA more beneficial than FastBridge? Like the data that you get out of NWA, I'm assuming is going to be more in-depth and more, I don't know, more rich data to really look and dig into compared to FastBridge, and is that cost savings worth that?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Here's the concern that I have about NWA is, what is that data good for? The initial thought was NWA was going to align to the MCAs. We don't see any correlation. That's the problem, is we're not seeing the direct correlation between success on the NWAs versus success on the MCAs.
But doesn't the NWA pinpoint your growth potential
For what?
in the content area that we're testing? Doesn't it give you the trend of where you're tracking and where they see your growth going?
I know, but it's not a required data point.
Okay.
So it's a benchmarking tool, really, that schools use it. Any of these schools use it to determine how well students have learned the standards. Well, the MCA is the ultimate, right? The
Okay.
MCA or the ACT is the ultimate, how well the students learn the standard. What I'm saying is, we aren't seeing necessarily the correlation between NWA, our chosen district benchmarking tool, to those other exams.
Okay.
Why do either?
Why do,
Why
I was-
do?
that was-
why
I was
do
going there
NWA
next.
or
Doesn't correlate,
Fast
yeah.
Bridge? Just strike them both.
well,
Well,
there,
first, what's that cost savings if you just don't do
I,
it?
I guess I'm not even worried about the cost savings. I'm thinking about it more, just more time in class for,
That's a
for
good point.
learning, and
Right.
if it's
Test
not, if it's
fatigue.
not a,
Yep.
if it's not a metric or a benchmark, why are we wasting our time?
yeah, and I think, I don't wanna answer that tonight.
Yeah.
But it's something I can come back to.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep. Fees for parking, Connie mentioned earlier about fees for ACT testing. We are not required anymore to give the ACT for free. We do it. Okay, that was a 1 or 2 year stint where the state said, you know, they're gonna pick up the tab. We no longer get that aid from the state to do that, so it comes out of district coffers. So the question is that something that we continue to do? I know there's some equity concerns there, which I've listed down below. But it's something to think about.
We don't charge for parking?
We do. We charge $100 per car.
Okay.
But is that enough, especially when, you know, to mill and overlay a parking lot is,
Right.
the high school parking lot is $500,000, so, you know,
That's 100 for the year?
yes.
Oh, so you're saying increase the fee. Got it, okay, yeah.
And I also think, and this is something that I think we need to do now, actually, is buy boots and boot wheels, because there are kids that try to get away with not paying the parking fee, and you're constantly chasing your tail. And I'd say we do one great big couple days swoop, and you go car to car, and you determine who has a parking pass and who doesn't. You give them a warning. You do it a week later or whatever, and anybody that didn't heed the warning gets booted, gets a boot on their wheel, and they don't get out until they pay their fee. Because it is a problem. I will tell you that to report that it is a problem, and making sure that people pay their parking fees. Some districts do that. I know Eastern Carver has boots, and they put them on the car wheels.
Could we just rent them for a couple weeks?
Could we borrow them from Eastern Carver?
But, you know, and I don't want to get bitter, but it's, how many times have we, as principals, said, this is where you drop off, this is where you pick up? That it's constant, you know, battle. And who, you know, we just don't have the resources to continue to battle that.
Right, well, I think that that's the point. I don't think that, none of that is necessarily punitive per se, but it's just that if we are forced to manage a tighter base of resources, we just have to have that level of discipline that you can't go outside of the rules without consequence.
Yeah, and I would,
And hopefully people would understand that just from a principled perspective anyway,
Yeah.
but you have to have a certain degree of reasonable enforceability to maintain whatever standard you put in place.
I think we worked really hard as a district to solve problems, you know. I gave the example, in the communication to you, is the elementary loop, you
Yeah.
know. 7 years ago, that's all we would hear. I mean, the cars were backed up down Aberdeen, you know, every day, and then we'd get complaints, and the city would get upset. So Chief Malls, myself, at the time Sergeant Empey, went back there, and that following summer, we did a capital improvement, and we added blacktop to that loop. And then we put those gates in so we could extend the stacking distance, and that's what the study showed too, is we just need more stacking distance to get cars in. We extended that stacking distance onto the playground. We put those gates in because we didn't want cars coming on to the playground area of that stacking loop during the school day. Well, I mean, that cost, I don't know, ballpark $40,000, $30,000, and it was a Band-Aid. So I almost feel like, because we've done a really good job at solving some of these problems in the interim, you almost get punished, or there's consequences for doing too good of a job. And I hesitate to say that, but it's the truth. If there's no, if you solve everybody's problems and they don't feel like there's any issue, you know, what motivation is there to move forward with a quality solution? And I would just state that people, I mean, we're taxing our resources. We have how many paraprofessionals every day that, whether it's raining, snowing, 20 below or whatever, they're helping kids because they're kind, wonderful people out of their cars. That just doesn't happen everywhere, and I think sometimes we take for granted in our community that we just do it. We do it because we're good. And I just, when a referendum like this happens, you can't help but feel like frustrated that maybe we just did it too well. That eventually there's a shelf life, and I think, you know, we're exceeding now the capacity of that loop with that stacking distance. It's, you know, we get another 50 kids at the elementary, and 30 of them drop off and pick up. You're adding, you know, 30 more cars to that. You're going to be stacked down Aberdeen again.
That's where we need to sell a pass. Pickup pass.
There you go.
So, I got way off topic. Just rounding this out, increasing facility use fees, especially on that custodial and other employee charges, because what we do, and most of that goes in the community ed fund, but then we do a charge back to the general fund. So that's something that needs to be on the table, in my opinion. Class sizes at the secondary eliminate a lot of our 6-class pay, so we just have to increase our core class size if we're going to continue to hold these electives. I don't want to hurt kids, none of us do, but I think we have to get creative, especially if we're going to have to cut, you know, a substantial amount of money. Transportation to in-town neighborhoods. There's a 1-mile boundary.
So tell me, I was trying to figure it out today. River Ridge, is that within the 1 mile?
Yeah.
So at the time when the developments were built across Old 169, is that within the 1 mile?
A lot of it is.
A lot of
It
Brattle
is,
Creek, yeah.
but there is what's called excess busing, so if there is a hazardous area or road or issue, that then we get some funding for that, I
Some
don't think it's
funding.
as much.
Yeah, and there's been some safety measures that have been added to the old 169 too, since we've first applied for that hazardous designation. Again, this is just, these are things that you as a board need to know. These are, because if you don't, again, it becomes an equity piece. If you don't bus to one neighborhood, and you bus to another within a 1 mile walk boundary, everybody can make the claim that this is a hazardous roadway. And we're doing that.
I look up MapQuest, a lot of addresses in a day, sorry. You know, they want busing and it's going to get cold in Minnesota.
I know we're talking about the busing, but if you don't bus, you're gonna get more people getting in the,
Loop.
in the loop, and then,
Maybe that's what we have to.
But those are the people that have to make their voice count.
Well, and to me, I mean, something like that, not saying that I haven't really thought about that one, but that's not probably affecting their education, right? You know, I mean, it's an inconvenience and it might stink for some people, but you're not affecting their education, learning abilities, so.
We get constant, we don't, but the bus company gets constant complaints about capacity on buses. Well, it's 3 to a seat. The minute you add another bus, you add $40,000. That's just a general rule of thumb. Every bus you throw on the road, every route is $40,000 bucks. So it's not just as simple as saying, oh, we can just add another bus. Even if it's an in-town route.
Cost.
so what neighborhoods would be impacted by that boundary? I know Bridle Creek Old and Bridle Creek New.
Yeah.
Is it the new Bridle Creek that's starting to get built? Is it the?
Yeah, we'd obviously have to,
We'd have to drive.
Cross
over.
Yeah.
It's a big radius. I mean, I just look, my house in Sawmill is 1.2 miles away, so it's not that far from being out of
Just
a mile
outside of
radius.
I know it would impact me, I'm only a quarter of a mile away, but That's, I I don't understand why my kids would take a bus to begin with. I always thought we would be walkers.
God, I would freak out.
It's, I know that's a hot topic item, but
Yeah.
it's something that, you know, I
What,
just.
what is our guideline? Do we have a guideline right now? Or has it been kind of a little bit kind of piecemeal as the neighborhoods have kind of
As to
developed
who
around?
buses or who doesn't?
Correct.
Yeah, there's a guideline. It's different between ages. There's two different, there's a K through 6 and then 7 through 12. So every time I literally do MapQuest and look up the address and see how far it is to what building they're going to,
Yeah.
and then see if there's a hazardous road that would make them either a buster or a walker or an excess. And then I look through that list every year to make sure every student is labeled correctly.
Well-
And then you'll get a parent argue with you, well, if you're picking up my elementary child and the bus is right there, why don't the other
Sure.
3 get on? Well, because those other 3 might be the 3 that push our bus over capacity. And then those 3 seats need to be able to go for your neighbor that has elementary kids.
Yep.
Again, I think it just highlights that in our district, we've really, I just don't think people know that the level of service is
Generous.
above and beyond. And, there's a lot of, like, Eric has a huge heart, okay? And there's a bus, actually it comes from the Sawmill Woods, some Ryan in my neighborhood, and it's not at capacity. So they stop down below the hill and they pick them up. Now, I've told them that we as a school district don't authorize that. Because there's a problem in it with equity. But we can't. We can't do that. I drive by it and see kids on that stop and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, why are they not walking? It's not that far. It's literally a couple blocks away. But we've had requests from other neighborhoods, and which I denied this past year because we're at capacity with different buses. And I had the conversation with Eric. I said, you can't be doing that. You can't be picking up within that 1 mile boundary if it's not a hazardous designation. You know? And I know that he's had the conversation that said if people complain or if we get to capacity, then we're gonna have to cease that practice. So that's really not on us. We don't get charged for that, but it's just a practice that
Yeah.
when you break it, people will be upset. But as to Connie's point, larger districts especially, they'll draw a line in the sand, and there's no discussion around it. It's not, well, we can make an exception. This is the way it's gonna be, period.
What isn't Shakopee's really 1.5 or 2 miles or something?
It's all by age, but then when we changed our ages when we went from when we changed the middle school, junior high concept, so we didn't change the boundaries, so some 9th graders get rides. It's getting looked at, but we're in the middle of changing boundaries again, so then it'll change again, so it'll be more fair, but we do get why does my 8th grader not get a ride, or get a ride and my 9th grader doesn't? They're in the same driveway,
Yeah.
well, we're going 2 different directions,
Yeah.
different schools.
Yeah, I just don't know how to, I mean, this is why, another reason why we need to get some additional assistance in messaging. It's so clear to me that we do more with less, and we're running out of time to be able to do that. With, we just approved contract settlements. These are not astronomical settlements. And at some point in time, our employees are gonna say, I can go work for, name a district, for a lot more money. And do we wanna keep our good, solid employees, or don't we? I mean, that's really the bottom line.
Right. And it's not a question, I mean, we do. So
We do.
how do we figure out a way to make sure that we are?
And do we want to
So-
give, and then on the same thing, do we want to give up electives or our summit academies or our enrichment programs to
Yeah.
have kids open enroll, and then we lose them all the way, and they
Right.
won't come back? We want our kids in our
Yeah.
community. We want them safe in our community, we want them in small class sizes to attract people, and it all costs money.
Yeah,
We
but to some
wanna-
degree, I think Tom is exactly right, where it's like, it's prioritization. It's, okay, is this
Education.
helping or hurting the education that we're providing the kids? What mechanisms do we need to be able to provide said education, and then what are all the other kind of nice to haves? And if we're gonna have to do a prioritization, work through the list.
That's what I was gonna say, is when we come back to discuss this, if we can have a rough dollar amount next to each one, and as many as you can possibly think
Yeah.
of, because I think we need to, we've gotta look at that $300,000 cuts, and where we can either increase revenue or decrease expenses, and then we can prioritize them as much as possible, rank order, till we can get to it.
Which begs the question is the whole process, because when we did this a couple of years ago, were you on that, Lauren?
I came
We
to
had,
that.
we had community members and we had committee meetings, and we actually divided up and we, worked on what areas we were gonna do budget cuts, and we got the feedback, you know, from the whole group. I mean, this list is pretty minute when you look at what we have to cut, and in my opinion, there's things on there that no way in
Oh, for sure.
would I touch.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but it needs to be
I'm-
all looked at, and there has to be a dollar amount signed too, because.
Right, yeah.
Because we do need to do that, and maybe that's what we do in this next session, turns into a, well, what about this, what about this, what about this, and then maybe we have to change it to something more like that.
I know,
Well,
I was,
We need input from, I mean, that time we had staff, a lot of
Yeah.
staff, because at that time, we were talking about cutting elementary art, and
Yeah.
cutting, you talk about raising ire, you know, from staff and people.
Yeah.
They got involved in the process, and then they were more apt to get involved on the other end when we went out for the referendum vote
Right.
too,
Yeah.
so I don't know if that's something that we wanna,
I was involved as a parent, so I wasn't
Okay.
involved as a district board member at all. So when I learned about it, I think Lexi was either going into kindergarten or gonna be in kindergarten.
Mhm.
And there was a lot of people. I'm gonna say
There
there was
was.
like 30 to
Yeah.
35 or 40 people between administration, staff, and community members. And then we broke up into groups. And
Mhm.
so I think it's gonna take a lot more than just
Right.
this. And I agree, we need to have the dollar figures and whatever else we can.
Yeah.
I mean, what
Right.
else, even things that we don't have on this list that maybe just, oh, yeah, this is one we can probably get rid of.
well, I know it's more work for administration and more work for us as a board, but I think it's an important piece to get the community and the staff involvement. And then a lot of those people, like Warren, ended up becoming vote yes committee people that ended up doing a lot of legwork.
That's
when
true,
we
I
went
did,
in.
that is exactly how I got
Yeah.
looped in.
They were
And I
invested.
wonder, I wonder if it's even potentially kind of a two-step approach, where
Mhm.
exactly kind of what you're saying, where, okay, now that we are in kind of the situation that we're in right now, what do we have to do for this next fiscal year to just kind of make it through?
Mhm.
But then more importantly, we know that we're probably gonna go after another, operating, vote for November. If that doesn't pass,
Mhm.
what's the next
Mhm.
step?
Phase.
And let's have the community kind of weigh in on kind of what that is, and we hope that we don't get there, but we have to be a responsible, prudent board.
Mhm.
And so we want to get as much input as possible, but hopefully that then, you know, kind of engages
Right.
the
right.
community to basically say, okay, we get it. There's priorities, you have to make a choice kind of for your family.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, this is the consequence if we're gonna continue to kind of go down this path, or if we can, you know, kind of course correct, and maybe we can find some kind of the key messaging kind of from that
Right.
component, in addition to whatever kind of outside resources we can get from the survey, and to understand what are
Mhm.
the key needs that our constituents have top of mind right now, and accommodate those the best we can.
Right, and it's important that we get a real good cross-section of constituents
Mhm.
from high school, elementary, preschool, you know, whole- non-parents.
Mhm.
Yep.
And the other positive of that is when that group starts talking,
Mhm.
it's gonna raise questions in the community about, whoa, you know,
Mhm.
they'll hopefully second think what just happened in our vote last week, so.
Yeah.
And something that Matt said is, I believe that our community trusts us because we have balanced a budget. We have done a good job. And they trust us that we can do that. So until we can, like, I recall, I didn't until Deb just said it. When they said they were gonna cut art, I remember
Oh,
it had the
Okay.
community up in arms that
It
they were
did.
gonna cut art. So I think unless we can get them involved, because we probably can collectively figure this out, but I think we need to get some of those people that were writing us emails and letters and whatever, and get them involved, because they're the people that will go out and talk, and because we couldn't get them to talk to us.
Right.
I do think there needs to be a balance there. I mean, we need to listen and understand where the priorities may be, but we can't abdicate our responsibility to say,
Right.
I have to cut $300,000, right? We'll be over here drinking coffee, figure it out.
Oh, absolutely not.
And let
No.
us know. So,
Right.
you know, I think there's a fine balance there, but certainly, what did the input, like, was it like PTO driven, or was it just kind of an open call for?
No, it was district driven.
No, but I mean, as far
Oh.
as like, how did you bring the people together? Was it through organizations, or was it just kind of a general
No,
call to
I
public?
think
I
You wanna go
know-
find people.
people have. yeah,
I was asked by a board member.
Yeah,
I
I
was
think
too.
board members had a, submit a bunch
We
of names.
basically
and-
reached out, and
Okay.
it was people in our community, it was people in our neighborhood, it was the people that actually showed an interest
Yeah.
too in education and
Mhm.
wanting to get involved in school, but I think we also need to tap into those that aren't maybe
Right.
so involved and so in the know. I was a new community member, I had a young kid, so, I mean, that's how I was
It's,
looped in.
I think it's easier said than done. I think we
Oh,
put
yeah.
out
For sure.
50, 60 invitations to be a part of that long-range planning process, and
You get 10 people to show up.
Well, not to be, what's our overall budget,
22 million.
right? I mean, so that's the other thing is we have to balance some, I mean, I don't wanna be flippant about $200,000 or $300,000, but it sounds like it's 1 to 1.5% of the budget, right? So, input's great, but, you know, if you're cutting $2 million out of the budget, that may be a little bit different effort too.
But you have to look at the long range, we
Yeah.
just approved all these contracts,
Mhm.
and the
Compounding it.
compounding effect of all this.
Sure.
And the fact that this didn't pass, and the fact that we're doing good things here, we wanna expand the summer program. We don't wanna get rid of it.
Right, and I think that that's where that, at least in my mind, kind of that two-step kind of piece is.
Yeah.
Like where, okay, this 200 to 400,000 is kind of a bridge, let's kind of be creative and figure that out. But exactly, Deb, to your point, where, you know, we know that our salary base is gonna increase, and we have other expenses that are gonna be
Yeah.
coming. And so we just need to be mindful of those kind of realities, and if we can't figure out a way to kind of offset that, then we're gonna have to take more substantial.
Well, we've cut $200,000 in a single year over the last 6 years, and we haven't called them wholesale cuts. They've just been efficiency reductions. A lot of them were done just because natural retirees and things like that, but where we didn't replace. 7 years ago, we were running classes with 6 kids. We've come a long way. I mean, I just remember coming in, that first budget that I took a look at, we were gonna overspend by $700,000. And we cut it to like 250. That was the last time we didn't have a balanced budget. I think ever since then, we've been able to balance the budget. Part of that is we've been fortunate enough to get increased aid at the rate of, 1.5% to 2% by the legislature per year. Where you're coming off years with Tim Valenti as governor where you didn't get a cent, and we were in a recession at that point in time too. The other piece is we've had steady enrollment growth. Last year we had 60+ kids additional. I mean, that's a substantial windfall for a district this size with a budget of $22 million. This year, we had predicted 30 more than what we actually got. Well, that's part of the reason why we are where we are.
Do we have any insight into that? I mean, can we compare that to housing starts in both years or anything like that? Or is it
We didn't predict 60+ last year.
Yeah.
We didn't predict that many. We predicted more like 20, and so we were about 40 more than what we predicted. We didn't do anything different in terms of our modeling this year
There's a
than we
fair
did
amount of
last year.
Well, that's what I was gonna ask, whether that, I mean, is open enrollment the really big variable in
Yeah.
that piece?
Yeah, it's probably one of the bigger ones.
Yeah. And that's always gonna be the question of, where's that wind gonna blow for those
Yeah.
kids that are deciding Prior Lake or us, Shakopee or us, Belle Plaine or us?
Yep.
You cut some of those things and
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's
It's a tough
that's the
balance.
consideration, yeah.
so, you know, I think that this part of it, the cutting, and I know we need to do this quickly because we're working on budget for next year, but I think it needs to be very strategic as to how we move forward with that piece.
And that can be the difficulty of the community input, right? Because you may hear, from what your feedback is, something like Summit Academy may not be as supported as, you know, maybe the board feels it needs to be from a strategic standpoint, right? Because I mean.
Well, it depends on who you are, right? If you're an
Right.
elementary parent and only an elementary parent, you have no idea what the Summit
What it is.
Academy
Exactly.
programming is.
Yeah.
You know, you'll hear, well, there's too much administration. Okay, fine, where would you like to cut?
Do we have data on a comparison from, because I have heard that too. And do we have that data that says
Every
district
audit.
ours are?
Every
It's on the
audit we
state
have.
website.
Okay.
The Minnesota
Yeah,
Department of
every
Ed.
audit, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It compares your teaching dollars to
So
your
again, I've been here,
administration, to your.
I'll call it 6 years, and every audit says the same thing. We spend less than the state average than a district our size on administration, and more on regular instruction
Mhm.
than districts our
Okay.
of similar size and the state average.
Mhm.
Obviously, I'm an administrator, so there's a little bit, we don't have assistant principals. We don't have deans at every building.
I think that's more of the path of where I was thinking of going, not what the state says, but if there is a district that's our size in our district, how many assistant principals do they have compared to us? How many, I don't know, counselors do they have compared to us? What are the things that they have that we don't have, that we can say, you think we are? Our state average tells us we're not, but also if you look at a district in another community that's comparable to what we have to offer, we are less.
Yeah,
Right.
and I think you also have to look at salaries too.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, not just the number of positions, but what we pay. I mean, somebody can say, well, oh, you got all that administration. And there was a misconception a couple of years ago. Well, you have a, whatever, this director. Well, did you know that director makes less than what, you know, a teacher that has been here 6 years? I mean, there's this misconception that when you've got a title, that you're making an astronomical amount of money. That is not always the case.
Do we?
Well, I think that that's the problem though, and where we have, I mean, and it's the nature of every small town, but we have a couple of loud voices that operate not necessarily from a misperception or not necessarily from a fact base, but there's an agenda that's trying to be driven. And regardless of how much data and benchmarking that we kind of put out, that, you know, kind of those are some of the things that we have to constantly kind of fight through. And I mean, and I think that, you know, what we're doing is appropriate, where it's try to take the emotion out of that, try to counter with, you know, here's kind of the facts and the reality, and take that kind of for what you want. But it's that constant battle, and we felt it a little bit over the last, you know, kind of few months, but at the same time, I think that every time those kind of continue to come out, hopefully we continue to have a consistent message to minimize those false claims. Because at the end of the day, having that degree of leadership, having that level of continuous training, that's how you build a culture. That's how you get excellent people to come to the district and stay in the district. Those are the ingredients for us to, you know, have the type of district that we have. So to somehow, you know, kind of walk away through that because some people who are misinformed or have an alternative agenda are essentially saying that you know, we're mismanaging the community funds. It's, I mean, and I'll say it on record, and I hope that some of those people who make those comments hear me. It's an ignorant viewpoint, and it's not helpful. It's not helpful to the community. It's not helpful to our kids.
So, some good suggestions, some dollar amounts associated with, you know, what we have for a list, maybe thinking a little bit more outside. This list was generated by, I had a team come up with some things, but we can revisit that. I'm hearing that it would be helpful to have some of those consultants we spoke of, that we talked with, potentially at the November work session, or if they can't make it that night, at a later time.
Could I ask, I know it would just be a tiny Band-Aid, but do we have any feel for anybody retiring this year?
Yeah, I mean, we have a matrix that we look at.
And so that, it would be helpful?
We have a really relatively young staff.
Okay,
So I
so
don't
that
see that
would-
as really being probably
Okay.
a significant issue, help.
Okay.
That would roll into the class size discussion, I would think, right? I mean, if enrollment increases again next year and you have retirements and departures,
Yep.
what do you feel?
I mean, our community has valued class size. You, as a board, have said, you gotta keep class sizes low at the elementary. I think we need to look at the research and what that says, because I've said, I don't necessarily agree with that point of view. While there is some merit to it, it's not the end-all be-all. It's the quality of the educator in the room that is the number one factor. And I think when you look at the work, we made a commitment last year, we as an administrative team, and said, we don't need an assistant principal. We don't need additional deans of students. We would rather have, and we did this through our retreat process, and that's where that trust piece comes in. We made a conscious effort to go the route of the teachers on special assignment as instructional coaches. This is not abnormal. Districts do this, you know, and there's reasons why. There's research, and we'll present that research, sort of to your point, Rob. Again, sort of that fact-based information, so that whether it has to be just at a board work session or it has to be a community listening session, whatever it has to be able to share, you know, even if it's just a summary of that data that just shows what that research says, because we're seeing tremendous benefits already this year. We're seeing great work that's happening. I mean, some of the CRT work and the matrix that have been developed to make sure that every child, regardless of how much family income there is, or, you know, what demographic that child, what race, ethnicity, we're trying very hard to provide an equivalent education. I mean, there's some really great work going on, and I think to a certain degree, and I said this to our admin team, we've gotten away from telling our story. We worked really, really hard for 2, 3, 4 years of telling our story. The year that we had a huge open enrollment increase, we had our movie theaters were in Shakopee, were playing our story. I think we need to get back to those roots to a certain degree. Because we're doing really great things that I think sometimes we're just getting taken for granted. I mean, yesterday there was the Veterans Day programming. That doesn't happen everywhere.
Right.
And it was fantastic.
It was.
So I think, again, regrounding ourselves in research and presenting the facts in a way that's easily understood, finding a way to engage with 2020 constituents, and retelling our story and doing just refocusing that effort. Our 3 strategies, and I don't disagree with what Rob said in terms of a 2-prong approach. Do I think we need to say the sky is falling? No. Because I don't think we're at that point, because we're a very efficient district. But at the same time, if we do nothing, and then something doesn't pass again, then we're in a deeper hole, and it just continues to compound itself. And then 400,000 becomes 800,000, and then 800,000 becomes 1.6 million. So, we have to have a strategy. I think that's all I have for my report.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, high school principals report.
Good night, Amy, thank you.
Night, Amy. Get home safe.
I'll just answer any questions if you guys have any, otherwise
Anybody? Then we'll just buzz through these middle school. Anything? Are they doing a celebration of learning again this year like they did? Was that last year?
You know, I haven't been part of that discussion. They've
That
been
was
doing
amazing.
the last several years.
Yeah.
I think typically, that's something that's done as a culmination of an interdisciplinary unit, so
Okay.
I haven't heard that they're not doing it.
It's
Okay.
usually right before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I thought so, yeah.
Might even be that Wednesday before.
Good numbers on conferences. Okay, on to the middle school. I mean the elementary. Anything on that? Anybody? Karen's report, anything? I just want to comment, she is doing an incredible job of juggling the summit program and doing a good job as our director of teaching and learning.
Very positive person.
Mm-hmm. Okay, athletic director's report.
There's a couple pieces I thought I'd highlight here. Obviously, besides the report, at one point in time, somebody asked for that, because we had talked about sort of that lesser number participating in volleyball, I think was the biggest issue. So this is just, if you have the opportunity to take a look at the participants, you know, it gives you, you know, comparison from 18 to 19, 18 on the left, 19 on the right, by grade level.
Soccer boys had huge numbers.
Yeah, they did.
They had a big growth too, and I think they're gonna have that again next year. I think they got a lot of sixth graders coming up that play soccer too.
I do think, I think Joe was smart in looking at some of those activities and adding sixth grade in. I think that's just smart to do. I know the River Conference is upset about that, and they are looking at adding to their bylaws to not allow sixth graders, and Joe asked why, and they said, well, they're not covered under the state high school league insurance. Well, guess what? Neither are seventh and eighth
Neither,
graders.
no, seventh and eighth graders aren't
So,
either.
the argument doesn't hold water, which we're
Right.
leaving the River Conference anyway, but I think there was just, you know, there's some negativity around that simply because we're trying to develop a feeder program.
Yeah. Well, and as a parent of a sixth grade kid that participated in a fall sport, just dynamite. It worked out really, really well. So I think that was a really savvy move on Joe's part.
Yeah, I think it was great.
And the conference we're moving to has middle school sports, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's some schools that are moving away from middle school, and, you know, some in the conference, I know that, I believe Waconia and New Prague have had conversation on whether or not they continue with middle school sports. the difference, a lot of schools, this is a third-party organizations, the clubs are taking over, so.
Yeah, like Prior Lake and Shakopee, they don't have middle school sports, it's run through clubs. So like even football, so they have a,
Which is
Remember
also
what it's
potential
called?
cost saving.
right.
That's-
But anyways, they're in a conference, they just form a conference for football for 7th and 8th, and they run all their football through that, well, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, so.
So, you know, for example, again, not every family chooses to participate in JVA activities, but there was that requirement for years that if you're in JVA, you're also in community ed, which is no longer the case. But 7th and 8th grade, we still have school ball programs and JVA. Third party, obviously, has an association. So that's one of the reasons why schools are terminating those programs.
I think that's interesting though, because I think that maybe that is something, I don't know necessarily for this board to think about, but maybe for Joe to think about, in the sense of, like, so what I was referencing for Finn was cross-country, and so the numbers are very different. The type of activity is very different, and so it kind of lends itself to kind of that 6th, 7th, 8th grade participation and being able to fold in pretty well with the high school kids.
Yeah.
Like the bigger sports with bigger numbers, like a basketball as an example, where to some degree there is just this natural level of duplication that's kind of going on, and in some ways can be kind of viewed as a dissatisfier because how entrenched the club team is. Is that something that we want to think about that could create a little bit kind of a win-win for the kid, for the families, for the district? So I don't know. I mean, maybe, I don't know if it's necessarily a one-size-fits-all, like for all kind of sports overall. Maybe there is a little bit of kind of customization that we want to think about going forward.
Right.
But it'd be interesting to see how other districts have grappled with that.
So that was one attachment that I wanted to highlight. The other is something that I know that Jeff Visner, when he was AD, I think he was the original author. It's had some tweaks, but Joe recently reviewed this document and wanted to make sure that you as a board were aware of what the distinction between state high school league and just in our district activities department policies, and then river conference, and what the distinction was between those three different categories. Any questions about that?
I have a lot of guilt by association questions.
If you're at a party and half the group is drinking and half the group is not drinking,
Yep, we don't have guilt by association.
we do not. So if you are at that party and you are not drinking, you are fine, even though, so if the police come, there, you've really no reason to run.
If you're holding, let's say, a can of beer, for example, and you're in a photo and you didn't drink that can of beer, somebody's gonna turn that photo in.
That you would get in trouble for.
Yes. Best advice is don't go.
I know, but you know, it's high school. They're gonna go.
Yeah.
The best advice is drink a Diet Coke or something like that in a can with a,
Yeah, it's,
Want to talk about the grant?
Historically, has that always just been kind of something there, or have there been trend lines up and down that we've seen over the years?
It's always
Wanting to
been
keep
there.
it very general question, not specific to any one.
it's
event.
been there.
It's just, it is what it is.
It is what it is.
Got it.
And it'll be what it is forever. But Deb brought up something positive, and I think that's good to talk about positive too. We did get a grant. I tweeted it out, so we got a grant for $5,000. All the credit goes to Erin. She wrote with community ed and activities department wrote a no child left inside grant.
Awesome.
And it's through the Minnesota DNR, and we were awarded $5,000, which we will use to purchase cross-country ski sets. So I think the plan was to be able to purchase 12 sets. They're a little over $400 a piece.
Very cool.
Yeah. And last night, I know they held a informational meeting for Nordic Ski. We have a coach. The coach is a Belle Plaine staff member, I believe. And so it's going to be a joint program between Jordan and Belle Plaine. And I know we had 6 boys and girls from Jordan that were there last night, and I don't know how many from Belle Plaine. But this year will be a club. They have an open invitation from one of the big ski races associated with the State High School League, sort of an open conference invitation this year to participate in some of those activities. But this would be more of an exploratory, get to know the sport, fundamentals, practice, do some events kind of more locally, with the eventual goal that it would become a State High School League activity. There are 3 schools, I believe, in the Wright Conference that have Nordic ski. So we would be the 4th.
I recall doing it in like Viad. I can't remember if it was middle school or what it was, but I mean, it's not something everybody does or has the opportunity to do, and it's a really cool experience.
It's a really good cross-country program complement. So a lot of cross-country runners do Nordic ski in the winter.
Okay, community ed report?
He talks about the program there. I commend, getting that feedback. We're just talking about that. I commend Stephen and the Joint Powers Committee said we'd like to hear from different associations as it relates to facility use. So each month he's been bringing in an association to talk a little bit about school district policy and what we use to govern how we do business, but also listening and getting feedback on how we could address any concerns that they may have in the facilities policy. And I think overall we're hearing it's just an adjustment with that consistency in how we're being charged. I think there's a recognition that it doesn't necessarily mean our fees are out of line or higher. I mean, Tom and Ryan, you guys can jump in on that discussion point too.
Yeah, it's just different. It's different from how it was charged to them in the past, and that different isn't always fun.
Yep.
But when you explain it and they see the
Data.
on it, they get it. I mean, they definitely get it. So it's a great opportunity for them to come in and just get a chance to, even if it's just venting or voice their concerns, and just a good discussion.
CATS report. Anything on that? I just want to thank her. I know she did a lot to promote the vote last week, and Andrea's report. Sounds like the high school additional food bar is going well.
Sounds good.
Yeah. That's good. And we're on board with sticking with the food vendor
For this year.
for this year.
And we'll reevaluate that and do an RFP, see where it takes us. But she came out and met with us, and I was satisfied with explanation and answer. I do think that it's a combination, it's a perfect storm. I mean, they're building on their facility. It's not that they're, because my concern was they're going out of business, and they're actually building on and building cooler space. Problem was they couldn't get workers to work. So they couldn't pick product and pack product, and that was the biggest issue. And then that in combination with last winter, Wisconsin schools didn't get any grace from the legislature, so they continued on in mid-June. They had planned to Tombstone their old software program and then test their new program and go live with it by July 1st. Well, all got delayed. So it was sort of that perfect storm of they didn't have enough workers and their software program had glitches. So they're having problems with trucks and deliveries and not getting product and that type of thing.
The employment problem is so massive. And we're struggling with it every day. It's hard to get people in the door. It's hard to keep them once they're there. It-
Chad's report. Okay, Tim's report. Did they have to plow and salt?
We salted. We're not gonna plow as much this year. It's too much money, so
Sure.
we're gonna do more salt approach, and if we're getting, an inch of snow or inch and a half, it's probably just gonna get salted unless it's gonna be super bitterly cold and that salt isn't gonna work. I mean, our lots always look really nice, I think, when you compare to some other places, but again, that's a tough balance between you don't wanna have a slip fall claim and you don't wanna spend a lot of money either. But this time of the year, I mean, it's gonna warm up. It's not gonna stay bitterly cold, so it'll,
We hope.
if it does, I'm leaving. I'm
You're a
moving to
weatherman
Arizona.
now.
I'm so cold out.
Oh,
I'm freezing right now. That's why I have my coat on.
Later, cold.
I was in Kansas City this morning and those guys were losing their minds.
Was that where they were, is that?
Oh, it was so funny. We had our person who was kind of coordinating our travel. She's like, okay, where are you guys coming in? Because we flew in last night. Are you gonna make it? How's your flight? And we're like, everything's good. It's on time. Got there and just, 30 degrees is very uncommon for them right now. And it's probably a little colder. It's probably 20 degrees. It's probably 20 degrees in Kansas City this morning, but it was pretty funny. So they're like, yeah, this is unprecedented. And it's like, well, people in Minnesota, we call it Tuesday.
That's right.
Okay, Curriculum and Technology Advisory Committee, I think Connie did a nice job of updating us on that. Meet and confer went well. I don't remember what we even talked about. What did we talk about?
Subs.
Subs, yeah. It was very congenial.
That was it wasn't.
Yeah, there was nothing,
Yeah, subs and
substantive.
extra prep time,
yeah.
but it was all good.
And admin assistants, we covered that already in negotiations. Paras, we have another meeting next week, right?
Yeah.
Next Monday.
Monday, yeah.
Joint powers meeting, who went to that?
Went well.
Okay.
We had,
We kinda
we had basketball came in, and that was the one that came and, we got to hear their spiel. They didn't have a lot, and it just an understanding, and
A little bit of input on some tweaks to,
Little bit, yeah.
some of the charging structure, but not,
yeah, they're trying to run, of course, they're trying to run tournaments for revenue too, and so they need to pay for some of it, and, so it's just tweaking more of how we do business, or they do business, both of us, so.
3% increase in rates.
Yeah, there's a membership increase on the memberships for the CERC, 3%, which is I think it's the first bump we've had, and this will be our 4th year, right? January starts, I think, our 4th year, so. It's like $1, basically, is the deal, so that's been a discussion for over a year, and so we settled on those and got those figured out. That's about it, I think.
Those are the two main things.
Okay, special ed parent advisory. Connie, I think, was that you?
Yep, we had Matt and Tim come and do the referendum.
That's right.
And there was 3 of us there. And Chad told us about the new SOAR lab that they've been working on, and some district upgrading in the programming, and everything's good. Trying to get more people to come.
APAC meeting, that would probably have been Sandy. Were you there?
I was.
Yeah.
Discussion, I mean, I think it's appropriate to have that discussion here is, yeah, we're gonna have to make some decisions on, graduation cap and gown, and whether or not, we wanna open the door to allowing, different, I don't wanna say adornments, because that's not the right wording, but different embellishments or different pieces to the cap and gown, whether it's beadwork or eagle feathers or those types of things, for our Native American students. And I think that's a policy committee discussion point, and then that policy committee then can share that information with the full board. I'm meeting with the council president here later this month to have a little further discussion on that piece. The issue really lies in creating a limited open public forum, and how much as a school district we want to do in that regard, and because there are some risks associated with that.
Right. And that's something that's continued to come up, is that there's new information that may change the decision-making, or is it just one of those things that's just always brought up during the meetings?
There is, the Commissioner of Ed, the new Minnesota Department of Ed Commissioner came out and said that she hopes that school districts will honor, culture and that type of thing. I think it was short-sighted. This is my personal, I don't have any personal feelings. It's more of, from a school district standpoint, how much risk do we want to take on? Because there are, no matter what people say, there are ramifications for opening it up. There's legal cases that show proof that the minute you allow anything is the minute you create a limited open public forum. Which is fine, but it's not fine, because it then becomes a policing issue. What's appropriate and what isn't, because you have to allow just everything, potentially, and it becomes, okay, because there's some limitations within what you allow, right? So, but there's different tolerances from different people, so you could get challenged. So I think it's important for, again, go through a process, for me to work with the council, to get that full ask, present that information to the policy committee. The policy committee needs to look at legal opinions and that data, or that oversight, and that committee can then make a recommendation to the board, the full board.
Makes sense.
Elementary school meet and greet went fine. Scale.
Yeah, I went. It was all about Met Council. There was very little school-related stuff. So it was,
And Met Council can be a hot topic in the scale.
well, they love their
community.
Met Council stuff. Just love it.
Okay, board reports. Ryan, I'll start with you.
I don't know. Glad to be here, happy to be elected, and starting to feel like I somewhat know what I'm doing. So, other than that, I don't know, covered a lot tonight.
Rob?
Yep, just formal congratulations, Ryan.
Thank you.
On the roll.
Connie?
I froze out a lot of football games, and I don't know, it seems like the last couple of months have gone really fast with lots of events, so really proud of the kids and everything, the staff, things that we've accomplished. A lot of referendum meetings.
Everything I was gonna say just left my mind.
Mhm.
But I did go to so I did attend middle school conferences this past week. They looked very well attended. I saw a lot of participation there, and I, for one, went. The classes that Ben offered, I did attend one of those, and that was very informational for me. I did the technology one of Schoology versus Infinite Campus. And then I also attended the middle school play on Saturday afternoon, and that was so cute. I mean, I really enjoyed it. Lexi and I both went, and it was good. They had really good turnout. They had to bring extra chairs in Friday night for it, so I think it's really good that we're doing that at the middle school level. And I'm hoping we'll be able to continue to do that.
Well, maybe after the end of.
I know, that's why I said I'm hoping we continue to be
Yeah,
able to
that
do
would
that,
be a
because it
shame.
was really, I mean, there was a good group of kids that were participating, and they really did a really good job, so.
Mhm.
I can't think of anything else. Those were the two things that left, came.
Yeah, congrats to the cross-country runners, that ran at state. That's pretty awesome. And, yeah, and I didn't get to the middle school play, but heard good things about it. My spouse went. And, she also went to the middle school conferences, enjoyed those. I went to the elementary school conferences, those went real well, so, yeah, seems like it's running well.
I went to the middle school play too. It was very, very, very well done. They did a great job. And yesterday, the Veterans Day programs were incredible. The one at the elementary, we were there,
Mhm.
was very well done, as was the one in the afternoon. The speakers in the afternoon were amazing, and it was fun because, it was special because retired Lieutenant Colonel Lance Schroeder was one of the speakers, and he was a graduate from here. And he talked about when he was in this building, in the old building, and how he was went to the recruiters thing to get out of class. And he ended up becoming an incredibly successful, high-ranking person in the Air Force, right? So it was the message that they gave was phenomenal. All of the speakers, the band and choir were great, but I think the highlight, and veterans that I spoke to and people that were there, the highlight was, and I'll cry when I say this, at the end, when Julie Beckius asked the military guys, people, to stand up and be recognized, the applause did not quit. And then our high school seniors started a standing ovation. It was very powerful. It was a wonderful event. Other than that, I want to thank you all for all your hard work on the referendum, especially Matt. You put in amazing, just an incredible amount of hours over and above, and we want to acknowledge you and thank you for that. I know it wasn't easy, and you took a lot of time away from your family, so thank you for that. That's it. Oh, are you going Saturday?
I am going Saturday. Can we
Saturday,
do that?
Lauren and I and Sandy will be going to pre-delegate assembly for MSBA.
So we're not leaving Friday at 4. I literally
No.
put in my calendar, for work. I'm like, everybody, I'm out of the office, after 3 o'clock.
No.
Okay, so it's Saturday.
morning is just the pre-thing. It's just for a couple hours at the League of Minnesota Cities. in St.
Okay,
Paul.
are we carpool?
Yeah, I'll
carpooling?
drive.
Okay.
And then the other one is the first weekend in December. That's the Friday and Saturday event. That's
And
the
I
big
need to
move
book my
left.
hotel for
Yes,
Friday
yes.
through the link.
Yep.
You guys got the invites for this. If you have 45 minutes on Saturday, well worth it to stop in and check this out. I've been over there a couple times, and they have this lower level dedication to armed forces, whether they're active or vet status, and it is awesome. They have a big museum upstairs that's really cool too. So if you got a little time, bring your family out. It's really cool.
Anything?
There's just some amazing things happening in our classrooms and our schools, and despite the fact that we were defeated, I think our community appreciates our schools maybe doesn't understand some of the behind-the-scenes parts, and we've already addressed that, so I won't go into that any further, but, I don't think that we should allow this to, a week later, I don't think we should allow this to derail our positive outlook and the forward progress that we've made. So I'm not gonna allow it, in my mind. We're gonna regroup, and we're gonna figure it out.
Okay,
Very good. Move to adjourn.
we are adjourned. I'm gonna sign this. Pass this.